Hello.
Hi, everybody. How are you? Hi.
Doing well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, my dear. I just was standing by and I'm going, you know, that moment where you're going, please let me have the right address and everything. But it looks like I'm right here. Hello, Alex. Good afternoon, everybody. It is good to see you and thank you for being here. There's a little plug. If you guys all go to exploremars.org, as president of Explore Mars, September 13th through 15th, we have our virtual Human to Mars conference. It is free virtually everywhere to everyone. So please share that news. We'd love to see you there.
Hello.
Yeah,
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, my dear. How are you?
Good, good. Let's see. Just waiting for Sherry. Let's see.
And who is that someone right there at your shoulder to your right side? That's hi there. Hi. Hi. You're a future space explorer. I know one just by how much you were leaning up close to your dada.
He's Enrique.
Yes. Hello, love.
All right.
Good afternoon, you guys. And as we wait for just a few more folks to join us, I do point you to going to exploremars.org. September 13th through 15th, we will have our virtual Human to Mars conference. It is free virtually to everyone, everywhere. We're super excited. We can't wait for the day when we can actually be in person once again. But in the meantime, you're going to hear from some incredible people. The lineup is already really spectacular, but excited to be able to offer that to free to people. So check that out and register today. See here. I know we're waiting on Sherry and a few others. It is kind of exciting. Again, I'm sure you guys are watching the news like I am to see that Starship is meeting its big heavy booster for the first time. So the moon and Mars loom ever closer. Artemis 1 should take its first flight this fall. So space is about to get even more busy here in the next many years. And Evandro, or I'm not sure, who would like to, can you guys give me co-hosting privileges so that when I am ready to share my screen, I can do so. So thank you for that.
Sure. Let's see.
And you let me know when you are ready, my dear.
Just a minute.
Eduardo, you're so sweet. Thank you. It's good to see you.
Just a minute.
Hey, everyone. I think we can go ahead and get started. Welcome, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to wherever you're joining us from the world today. We're super excited to have you. My name is Varsha. I'm here on behalf of the CSS. Today we have some very exciting material for you, and it's being brought to you in combination with the CSS, Data Edge, and I2A2. I am going to duck out really soon, but not before I hand the reins over to Evandro to take over and lead us through our exciting plan for the rest of the day. I don't see Sherry in the room yet.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for her. I have just sent the link.
Okay, awesome. Evandro, now that you have the reins, feel free to hand them over to Janet when she starts her presentation. But super excited to see you all here. Have a wonderful time. And I'm going to stay on mute and go off video now.
All right.
Thank you.
Let's see. Now you have Sherry here.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Sherry. How are you?
I'm doing amazing. It's Happy Friday.
Yeah. Today I'm very glad because I have two amazing girls that I love in the world, because these two girls it's amazing. So I was thinking about when I can put together two persons like you guys. So you need to meet each other and to know each other.
Absolutely.
And so I would like to start today with Sherry Colbourne. And Sherry, please, let's start. Go ahead.
All
You
right.
want to present something?
No, I'm just going to talk because, you know,
Okay.
I don't like presenting to people on Fridays. It's too much work, man. No. Well, hey, you know what? It's a beautiful day here in Toronto. The sun is shining and the weather's warm. And I just, you know, things are starting kind of returning to normal. I just got back from being with my trainer, who, ironically enough, is helping me combat the effects of gravity. So, you know, just to maybe get started on kind of what got me to a place where I developed this love for space. My story actually starts about 30 years ago. I'm dating myself, I realize, hence the trainer. But as a young woman, I had left Toronto and moved to the Waterloo region and joined a company called ComDev, who I think now are, I think they're owned by Honeywell. ComDev built communication payloads that powered, you know, many of the communication satellites that we have been using for the past several decades. Of course, back then it was pretty bleeding edge technology. And I was a business person, not an engineer. So I'm not entirely sure how I managed to land that job, but I can tell you that it was probably one of the most pivotal decisions I ever have made in my life. I was, you know, frankly scared to death to join a company that was developing communication payloads. I knew nothing about such technology. I wouldn't know a multiplexer from a diplexer. So I was jumping into deep water, and I had to be confident about my ability to learn, because that was what was going to, you know, keep my head above water. And when I got there, because I was, you know, so green, I really just invested a ton of time talking to the engineers, talking to the technicians, really talking to anybody who would talk back to me about what they were doing, how it worked, why it worked. And what I realized, you know, just in that little span of time, was probably about 6 months, is that a lot of the untechnical people in the building really didn't understand our technology. And so I took it upon myself to create kind of, I don't know, like a book, a library or something of terminology, so that the non-technical people in the building could really understand what we were doing. And it became kind of like an employee orientation thing, you know, that people could understand. And the reason why I tell you that is because I think it kind of links to what Janet will be talking about later, which is, you know, she has spent her career educating and trying to attract young children to something that is a pretty heady concept, which is space. And it's an important element when you're doing that to sort of break it down into pieces that people can understand. So, you know, my career started there. I spent 10 plus years with ComDev, and over that, you know, period of time, I witnessed many, many innovations being created by, you know, the very brilliant engineers and technicians that were employed by ComDev. And, you know, small aside, full transparency, that is also where I discovered my my love of engineers and smart people in general. And so it became, for me, it became I think I used the word pivotal decision. It took me kind of out of my comfort zone in my business world and put me smack dab into a very highly technical world. And, you know, guess what? I fell in love with technology. And so I'm, you know, always have said I'm so grateful that I, you know, got to work there because it really kind of lit my brain up. And the thing I think that struck me the most about working in an environment like that is that most of the technologies that were developed by ComDev were actually being developed without the opportunity to really prototype and test them in a real life environment that they were actually destined for. So, you know, they had all kinds of really interesting labs in the building, you know, shaker tables, you know, vacuum chambers, electroplating. I mean, just incredible technology that I, you know, honestly had never even known existed. And that was really exemplified when I would then travel on behalf of ComDev, and I would go to NASA, I would travel to the European Space Agency, I would go to Space Systems, L'Oreal, I mean, many different places that I got to travel to after, you know, acquiring security clearance that took me probably a year to get. And what I got to see there was, I mean, nothing short of mind-blowing, you know, to witness these, you know, massive stories high vacuum chambers and shaker tables that, you know, they were testing these huge satellites on, you know, was just like, really, your brain can't almost take it in. And what was interesting is that when I had walked through the doors of ComDev as a young woman and saw everything that they had, I was like, wow, this is crazy, cool stuff. And then when I got to go to the next level at NASA and other places and see the scale of these test facilities that they had, I mean, it really made ComDev's test labs look pale by comparison. But, you know, it never lost. Space is something that is, I don't know, it's, you know, it's sexy, it's romantic, it's adventurous, it's, you know, it's everything. And so I think for people like me who actually have a strong creative side to them, it's a hard thing to get over. You know, it's like a first love, you know, you never really quite get past it. So eventually well, maybe I should go back a little bit. So, I mean, ComDev really was my first taste of technologies that would revolutionize the way personal communications happen. And then everything that once, really was wired became wireless, and what was wireless became wired. And I mean, not wired in the true sense of the fashion, but, fiber. And so, at this young age of like 27, 28 years old, my mind, I think, really was forever imprinted with the idea of possibilities. I think that is the magic of space, is the idea of possibilities. And it seemed to me in that time that literally, if the mind could dream it, the mind could make it. And so that has been something that's followed me through the rest of my career. I take a very no barriers approach to things. Let's just kind of brainstorm, and that's where I think space really provides us with a very fertile, creative landscape to do whatever we want to do. So following on from there, when I left ComDev, of course, because of the magic of space, I was looking for something equally as revolutionary. And I found a small startup which was building an original, what we would call, I guess I would call today, an IoT concept for remote meter reading and home monitoring. Way, way, way ahead of its time. This startup didn't survive, as often is the case when you're a little too far ahead of your time. But it expanded my consideration of the possibilities of technology. And ironically, everything that they were trying to build is now called home automation. And I'm sure most of you that are on this call, like me, have technology that keeps track of, everything from, our energy consumption to, what we order for dinner, right? I mean, we got so much data on ourselves that lots of people are, making great money from, actually. So, like I said, I think the intrigue of space is, is hard to replicate. And so when that startup went underwater, I went in search, of course, of another inspiring technology company, never believing I would find one. But guess what? I did. I found another small startup that was looking to bring exceptionally high security to, the new devices back in the day. Of course, they're not new anymore, cell phones. This company was started by a very, very brilliant mathematician who commercialized a new cryptographic technique called elliptic curve cryptography. And the golden nugget that it was solving is that it would consume far less energy and storage than what existed at the time. Information security was really evolving at that time, and the proliferation of mobile devices, really created an opportunity which did not exist just a few years earlier. And it's interesting because cryptography is now, of course, a cornerstone of everything we do, and seems to be on the tip of everybody's tongue because of our our fascination with the new cryptocurrencies. So we're hearing a lot about those. So I guess really just when I thought there wasn't anything more to be invented, I came across another innovative company that was working on biometric technology. So biometrics at that time were a pretty fledgling industry, I should say. And there were a lot of small startups working in the space on solutions such as like facial recognition, fingerprint, iris, and other biometric approaches. So biometrics were at that time finding a place in things like physical access control, as well as time and attendance systems. And guess what? No surprise, these small startups all started to find places to innovate and grow. And I watched as some of the competitors of that company took their biometric technology and further innovated, and of course went on to create solutions that no one had even thought about. And of course, we know now that Google, bought a small facial recognition company and integrated it into their photo management software. Apple bought a small fingerprint biometric company and integrated it into some of their devices. So, there's kind of a pattern here, and the pattern is that things that seem like very lofty, far-reaching innovations, not all, but very definitely some, find their way into our everyday life. And, we get to a place like we are right now, and, we have all of these technologies embedded in sort of our everyday life, and we don't even talk about it. We don't even really know about it. So what I witnessed really with these small startups is, their ability to grasp an opportunity and take an idea and innovate it to develop, other technologies. And so, in the areas that these various examples I've just given you, the companies and the founders of these organizations were really pioneers for, as I said, what we take for granted today. So from my vantage point, I see an equally exciting opportunity for entrepreneurs to help meet the challenges of space, be it for the benefit of, us here on Earth, or to support astronauts, or, in Elon's world, colonizing other worlds. I think, many who are looking at space may think that it's kind of an impossible feat due to the cost of getting there. But I think, as I've certainly seen over my lifespan, and, really thanks to our fabulous billionaires, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and Richard Branson, who are incidentally still entrepreneurs themselves, they're building these launch capabilities and beyond. And so space has now become much more accessible. So give you an example of that. There's a small startup here in Toronto called Kepler. They recently launched many of their own satellites on one of SpaceX's rideshare programs. And Kepler saw an opportunity to bring low-cost communications to remote areas of the planet as a way to support IoT applications. They provide kind of a low-cost solution to customers who don't need low-latency, high-speed solutions like Starlink. And what I love about what they've done is that they have identified, a real need. They have developed a pragmatic solution that delivers a low-cost option. And, as a small company, has somehow had the wherewithal to find seed capital and make it happen. And so, to me, that is an example of the accessibility of space to entrepreneurs. I think another area that is quite exciting to watch is, everything that's going on with microgravity solutions. The ability to cost effectively achieve microgravity, enables entrepreneurial companies to commercialize things that can only be done in a microgravity environment. So there's, a myriad of industries that can benefit from microgravity manufacturing and research. And there's a company called Varda Space Industries, which after some seed financing raised, I'll probably get the number wrong, but it's like 42 million for off-planet manufacturing in microgravity. Just when I hear myself say that, right? There's a startup that raised, $42 million for manufacturing off-planet. Like, what? It's incredible. And it would have been unheard of, even a decade ago. And so when I hear stories like that, I just get so excited. Everything about space I love. I watched all the, the bad space movies back in the day, War of the Worlds, where it was all aliens and bad things, E.T. that tried to make space friendly. So, to me, I think space provides this incredible opportunity. And although the examples that I've given are, I mean, I guess they're kind of like the heady technological stuff, but whenever you think about space, or at least when I think about space, I try to, like, you know, frankly, just make it real for me. And I think about, well, what would I need if I lived in space? Like if I really did go to Mars, and I need a house, I need ways to produce food, I need, you know, water systems. I mean, you need construction materials. I mean, how do you get them to Mars? You know, do you mine Mars and convert things that are there into products that you can build homes from? Or, you know, how are we going to do that? So I think, you know, really the imagination is the only limitation here. And I think our three, you know, smart, very rich pioneers who are going there, you know, in advance of even NASA nowadays is, you know, testimony to what imagination, and I guess in their case, a lot of money, can do for us. You know, here at Spark Center, so Spark Center, just for any of you who don't maybe know what we do, we are an incubator of fabulous entrepreneurial companies and founders, which has given me a kind of a easy way to hang out with all the smart people in the world, because they're all right here under my roof. But we are one of the designated members of the Ontario, which is a provincially funded program called the Autonomous Vehicle Innovation Network. And so we are one of 6, lots of acronyms, because that's one thing I did learn when I joined ComDev, that space has got lots of acronyms, right? If you don't have at least a dozen a day, you're not really talking the talk. So we are one of 6 regional technology development sites, which is an RTDS. And so we have companies producing, you know, cool things like autonomous solutions. And, you know, one of the things that excites me about AVEN, probably more than any of the other, you know, programs we have here, is that, you know, when you think about the past, you know, rovers going to, you know, Mars, to the moon, the space station, like there's a lot of autonomous mobility that has been already built into those solutions. And now we're bringing them, you know, here to, you know, the big blue ball to make mobility easier for people who would otherwise not have mobility. I think of the aging population. You know, I've witnessed over my own lifetime, you know, people get to an age and then they have to give up their license, and it can be quite a devastating, you know, devastating moment for them, because, you know, they lose their independence. So, you know, autonomous vehicles and the solutions that come out of autonomous mobility will most certainly be useful, you know, for space, I guess, you know, living on space, right? Or living in space, living on other planets. Certainly autonomous mobility is one of those things that could be brought to bear there. I also think about plant and crop production. An interesting little side story is that here at Spark, we get these crazy opportunities sometimes to get involved with things. And we had a small funded project. Again, I think it was by the province and the federal government. It was called Digital Main Street. And because of COVID, as we all know, our retailers were, you know, heavily impacted by COVID. And so there was some funding to help these retailers and help urban centers recover from the devastating impacts of COVID. And although we took some of that money and put it into a retail solution, we also took some of that money and put it into an aeroponics vertical growing solution, because what we noticed is that during COVID, a lot of our unsheltered population were really sizably impacted. And so here at ComDev, or at Spark, I should say, we have a vertical growing wall. We've been producing microgreens and you know, just general greens like lettuce, arugula, bok choy, things of that nature, on this massive vertical growing wall, and providing food to our local food shelters and missions, so that they can put fresh produce into the meals that they create for our unsheltered. Because another strange little aside is that the unsheltered population generally don't get fresh produce, and as a result, diabetes in that population is quite a bit higher. So, a little different than space, but I think for me, what has happened with technology, it's certainly during my career, is that all the lines are blurred. There's no, oh, that's only for this or only for that. Like, we've got the ability to use technology and the incredible gray matter that, these very smart people are bringing to the table to solve space challenges and grasp opportunities that space will give us, and also look backwards and use those solutions to help ourselves here on Earth. So with that, I'm going to introduce, unless there are some questions. Does anybody have any questions? Or I'm not sure.
Yeah, Ashley looks like she's got her hand up.
All righty. Go for it.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Ashley.
Perfectly. Firstly, thank you so much for your in-depth analysis and discussions. It's very incredible and interesting. Secondly, seeing as the topic about today's meeting is about entrepreneurship and new space in the context of Canada, I have been reading about some of the latest developments happening in there regarding MDA and the Canada Arm Free, as well as also Kepler Communications having new investment. Do you have any knowledge about the launch industry in Canada? Because I'm hearing about a spaceport being built in Canada, but that's pretty much the only information I'm able to find. So do you have any awareness about it as a Canadian Elon Musk somewhere that wants to establish a Canadian SpaceX?
You know what? I don't, but man, I sure love to know. And I'm going to throw something out there since we've got this awesome group of people. So as you can probably tell, I'm getting kind of closer to the end of my career than I am to the beginning of my career. And here's what I want to throw out as an ask of anybody: is my dream before I leave my career is to stand on a podium with Elon Musk beside me. So if any of you guys and ladies know Elon or his organization, please let me know, because the one thing that we can do here at Spark is we put on some really killer events where we bring really smart people together, and we've got great venues in this region here to host events. And now that things are opening up, how cool would it be to have a nice Ontario-based innovation event with our leader in innovation, Elon Musk, on the podium. So, but I don't know anything about that, Ashley. I vaguely have got this. I kind of, in the back of my brain, I think I've read something to your point about a Canadian entity, but I don't have a lot of information about that right now, but I will definitely go look it up as soon as I finish this call, because I'm curious.
Definitely, because I did read an article that they're planning to build a spaceport near Halifax in the town of Canso in Nova Scotia. Because of its geography, you can access sun-synchronous orbits, geostationary orbit. So I have been wondering, as Canada, why don't we have our own indigenous launch capabilities? So we can send supplies as well as crewed missions to the ISS, as well as even private space stations in that orbit at some point. Because this Ukrainian company is going to be launching this rocket from Nova Scotia, but the company, they're saying they're open to different launches. Now, there's this Canadian company called C6 Launch Systems, which is a Canadian small satellite launcher that are building amazing rockets. They even did an engine test in Spaceport America in New Mexico, and it's incredible what they're doing, as well as the University of Montreal with Concordia University doing a rocket test. So because I read, Canada has an incredible labor force, it has a good experience in aerospace and everything, but we've always been losing those talents to the US every single decade. So do you think that
Yeah.
now is the time that we should start to take advantage and harness these things? Because Canada has the geography, we have the labor force, and we have the know-how. So do you think maybe, hopefully, we should start to see more Canadian Elon Musks of our lifetime, as well as an Indigenous launch capability?
Well, I would like to think so. I really would. I think, you sort of ticked off all the things we do have. And here's what I would say. The one thing we don't have is money. And that's because the investment community, from my perspective, it doesn't have the appetite for risk. Canadians are a conservative species. And it frustrates me. I mean, I've had the pleasure of, traveling all over the world and living all over the world. And it's the one nature of Canadians, which I know sometimes serves us well, but it also has it's like every strength is a weakness, right? So there are lots of missed opportunities because we just don't have the venture capital and the kind of institutional money and that appetite for risk that our counterparts say in the US have, and also, plus, we probably don't have as many billionaires, so that's the other issue. We're a pretty small country, right? Like 40 million versus 400 million. But I'd really love to see somebody step up and start to become, the Canadian Elon.
Wow.
And it's Ashley, listening to you, and you certainly, it sounds like you need to be that person that partners with your good friends on here. What you're going to hear me say in a few minutes is really going to echo so much of what Sherry's saying, is that, if we look back at things that sounded crazy, Nikola Tesla was telling people in 1909 that someday that people would walk around with a phone in their pocket and that they could have wireless communications with people all over the world. I'm pretty sure people looked at him like he is crazy, and now we do. And so truly, Sherry, what I love that you said is that the only real limitation here is imagination. Again, you look at Galileo, who 400 years before they got to test it out in Apollo 15, hypothesized that a hammer or a rock and a feather could land at the same time if were in the vacuum of space, without any way to clearly, to do that in a lab. So that, I think, as I hear you speak, Ashley, it's like your passion for this is evident. So you have to find those ways to do it. And I think that's what I'm witnessing more now than ever in this exponential time of growth, that in your lifetimes, you're going to see, Sherry, you probably read the same things. It's like, we're talking $1 trillion business here in the next 30 years. This is the next frontier. This isn't the final frontier. Space is the next frontier. Yeah. And if I may, I'd love to show you this video. I've been working with AIA, and they've got this beautiful video of what they envision for the future. Do you mind me sharing that? It's pretty crazy now, because especially when you're talking about your autonomous cars and vehicles. Imagine that one day you don't put your kid on the bus, you put them, in a little car. Yeah. So take a look at this. This could be your guys' future with your children here in a few years.
Today is sunny, 72 degrees. Right on me. Please enjoy your trip. Watch your step as you exit.
And again, the first time that I saw that, again, we sort of go back and as if we're reading some, you know, Arthur C. Clarke novel or, but even
The
then,
Jetsons.
I expected to have a flying car because I watched the Jetsons in my youth. But, you know, it's like if we look at Stanley Kubrick's A Space Odyssey, or even Arthur Clarke had a name for them called news pads. I mean, we now know what those things are. They're iPads, and neither one of them lived to see the release of iPad in 2010. But it's like, if you read any of those books, it's exactly what they were describing. So one of the things that, you know, I tell my students, and granted, most of the time I'm talking to, you know, like elementary, middle school, and high school kids, but it's like, it's the same, whatever age we are. It's like, whatever we can think or imagine today truly could become like great science tomorrow. It's just that leap of where technology takes us. And it's like, it sounds like your work, Sherry, certainly from where you started at ComDev to right now, can your mind, I mean, you must have seen so many iterations that have landed you. It's like, it would have seemed like future sci-fi stuff if somebody told you about that 20, 30 years ago, right?
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, I think I've always, I mean, since I had that opportunity in my career, you know, I'm always the person that's on the internet buying some crazy new technology. I've contributed to a lot of startups, let's just say that. But it's I don't know how to describe it. Like, for me, it's almost like, my husband will tell you it's a shopping addiction. It's not. It's it's this desire to try new things that is not commonplace. You know, like, I love to buy technology. I love to try it. It doesn't always work great. And often, you know, if you stick with those companies long enough, they perfect it, right? They actually perfect. And then all of a sudden you've got this incredible piece of technology. So yeah, I mean, I'm a total technology junkie. That's all I can say.
Well, you know, it's like, guys, I'm probably the oldest one here. It's like, I can remember the day when my dad had the 8-track and the El Camino, and we thought that was some like far out tech. Now, and then it's like cassettes and then CDs and DVDs, and now we don't have to have any of those. It's like, just in my lifetime, you know, I'm 54 and like seeing all this stuff. If I may, I'm just going to quickly, there's so many things that I want to share, and I just love listening to you so much. And it's like, just remember, it's like, whomever you are, and I'm sure, Sherry, you may get these kinds of emails as well. If you're from another country, whether it's USA, Canada, India, wherever you may be from, you know, there are certain things in space law. If you're interested in law, there's an entirely fantastic group called Space Court that I highly encourage you to go join. You can become an intern. Learning how we're going to take those Artemis Accords or the Outer Space Treaty of 1967 and create safe space, and space that is for the benefit of all humanity is going to be key. But again, you know, so many times I think people immediately go, oh, we've got to be astronauts. Well, we've seen in July, we've seen that, you know, with the success of Sir Richard Branson's, you know, first kind of like commercial space flight, with Jeff Bezos taking the incredible, indefatigable Wally Funk up. If you all don't know the story of Mercury 13 and Wally Funk, and why it was so incredible that this 82-year-old woman got to go to space. From the time that she was 19, she went through the same testing as the Mercury and Gemini astronauts as they were forming the Apollo program. And by and large, the women of Mercury 13 did better, outperformed the guys. Even Dr. Randy Lovelace, who tested them, said the ladies complained a lot less than the fellas. But because of like the way that times were years ago, it's like John Glenn, it's like Jerry Cobb is before Congress begging to go to space. She would have been a fine astronaut as great as Valentina Tereshkova, but it's like basically John Glenn came into Congress and said, men go to war, men fly planes, men go to space. And that was done. And so it would take, so the Russia sends up cosmonaut Valentina Tereshkova in 1963. It would take the US 20 more years, 1983, before we send Sally K. Ride. So the gift for me in watching some of these commercial spaceflight launches is, as Sherry said, it just opened up. Space just got a little closer for all the rest of us.
Yeah.
And the fact that it honored this lady who over 60 years never gave up on a dream. So as I watched it, I wept. I had the incredible privilege of interviewing her a couple of times last year. And I thought, you know what, she is proof. It's like, take that, package that, proof that there's no expiration on your dream. And so no matter how outrageous it might seem to others, but you know, an astronaut is still a fine way. Again, another thing to watch is the Inspiration 4 mission. It's going to be the SpaceX's first ever all civilian space flight. What they're doing from the time my friend Dr. Cyan Proctor got chosen for that mission in March, she's going to pilot this the spacecraft here in September. It's astounding. So yeah, astronaut is one way, but it's not the only way. And so right now, even just type up there in chat. It's like sometimes when I'm in presentation mode, I can't always see there, but just share with one another 3 careers that you don't normally associate with space at all. Like, be as wild mind as you possibly can, and just have fun with one another. And I'll like check out those responses here in a second. But as we think about there, it's like, you know, you can do design. I mean, look at SpaceX's spacesuits, way cooler than those clunky big orange ones, right? It's like you think fashion, design. And I think if I'm going to go to the moon for a vacation, I can't wait for the day that I get to say to my grandchildren, hey kids, we're not going to Disney World this year, we're going to the moon. Grandma's going to need to go shopping and have something fab to wear when I'm floating around in microgravity. So who's out there who's going to be the fashion of that, right? There's going to be luxury like items. It's like many years back, Louis Vuitton had a great ad that showed Sally K. Ride and Jim Lovell and Buzz Aldrin all with Louis Vuitton suitcases. So who but knows, right? You're going to need manufacturing. We're going to need things that are impervious to radiation. We're going to need assembly. So communications. So again, wild mind about what those are, because it's all changing so exponentially. And it's like, I think what we've seen is like by orders of magnitude, stuff jump ahead so quickly. We got to catch up, and we need your minds. In fact, the world space is in desperate need of your genius. So whether you're working on the next lunar landers and the communication devices, who's going to put the first, 5G on the moon? How do we communicate more quickly and more easily between places that are now 250,000 miles apart? We're going to need farming. Just as she was talking about that wonderful kind of, vertical farm and how they were doing that. It's like, we cannot, every astronaut I've ever gone says the food is improved over time, but freeze-dried food begins to get a little boring. And so again, how do we spice it up? Can we have like hot peppers and something that kind of like enlivens our palate in kind of like some incredible place? So farming. If you're not following the work of Dr. Daniel Tompkins, Tompkins, I highly recommend you follow him on LinkedIn. He's come up with a whole plan of how to go to Mars or the moon, plant plants that you can then produce plastic from the plastic that you extract from those plants, then you 3D print the next greenhouse. So virtually, it's like what you're feeding or planting and extracting and harvesting is just more and more stuff that you can 3D print from. It's a fantastic plan and thesis. So follow his work. All right, come on. All right, now this is another thing. This will blow your mind. All right, John Hanasek with Avatar Medic. And this is this is so forward as far as telemedicine goes, but it's not that far off. We're using everything from origami to figure out the tiniest ways that we can insert something into different cancer cells. But Avatar Medic, imagine something's happened to your crew on the far side of the moon or on Mars or in orbit at the Lagrange point. And now, you know, you've got a doctor, you've been trained in like basically EMT stuff, but your compatriot needs their appendix removed. So you put on your, you know, VR set, all of a sudden your hands become the hands of a surgeon, and you are literally performing surgery, but doing so through this kind of like weird technological avatar. Yeah, I'm not sure I want to be the first person to sign up for that surgery. However, this is the stuff. You can check him out. It's like look up online Avatar Medic for anybody who's interested in biology and medicine. All right, matter shift is another thing that my mind just kind of goes supernova over. So if you think 3D printing, I mean, again, I was teaching camps all summer, or all of July, and this kid comes up and is like, hey, Miss Janet, my dad and I 3D printed you this wrench that they used on the International Space Station. All that stuff is open source and it works like a charm. So you bet I'm going to carry this with me when I'm out on the road, and hopefully I don't have a flat tire, but at least I've got something that would help me out. So if you think 3D printing's wild, how about molecular manufacturing? Yep, that is what matter shift is doing. So you are going to molecularly manufacture. Need like a kidney transplant? No problem. Let's extract those cells and we will molecularly, I mean, down to that like tiniest level, then replicate an organ. So you could have something and then you kind of like order it, like you're going to Amazon, flipping through, it's like, oh, I like that kidney, I'll take that one. So molecular manufacturing, it is mind-blowing what they're doing. So I highly recommend you check out those guys. Now, this is where years ago I thought if I had any kind of money, this is where I would stake my claim. I would become the space trash garbage collector. It would be the moniker I'd have on my building. It would be, I would do this because our skies are crowded, dangerously crowded. On one of the spring times, SpaceX launches to the ISS. Here the crew is about to go and take their nap. They get a note and says, oh, nope, put your suits back on, getting your seats buckle in, because they noticed that a piece of space debris was heading towards them. And it doesn't matter if it's a piece of a paint chip that it came off the space shuttle 20 years ago. That thing hurtling through space is like a cosmic bullet that could cause incredible harm to the entire system that the astronauts are in. And so we have to think about how are we going to do that. So the European Space Agency has talked about this satellite embracer. I kind of like laugh at that name and also love it at the same time. But it's kind of like, and maybe they thought satellite embracer sounded better than space scoop, because yeah, it kind of does sound like that we could, you know, be scooped. I don't know, that maybe that sounds like if you're walking your dog, but I kind of love space scoop, call it what it is. But if we can figure that out, you've also got this, I'll show you this video here really quickly. And it's this remove debris with a net. Check it out.
And the liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket and the Dragon spacecraft, packed with science and supplies for the International Space Station. As you can see in this view, we have capture confirmed. Capture coming right on time.
But here's, you know, again, we're looking at, they even tried out some of this, and they're trying to figure out how is it was deployed from the International Space Station, and it's going to be like, how can we start really clearing up the skies from all of this debris? And it successfully captured a CubeSat using this little net and everything. But it's, you know, you've got tons of CubeSats. You're going to have more. It's like with Starlink, and it's like what a genius, wonderful thing to give to humanity is access to, you know, to the World Wide Web. But again, it's like there's a lot of debris up there that can cause a lot of harm. So you've got everything from Space Scoop to Space Net, or I guess it's like, again, I bet debris, like Sherry said, probably stands for a very cool acronym, although I don't know what that would be, but I'm pretty sure they sat around thinking about what that would be called. Now, again, when you take a look at some of these images, you just have to remember that, again, I'm going to roll the volume down because it's like, and you know, a lot may be an understatement because you've got in different layers of that. And so over 5,500 launches in the history of our space program, you've got over 23,000 like space debris objects. But that's not even counting like the little small ones or those kinds of things. So who but knows, right? So we have to think about, so the Air Force and the Space Force. So imagine we all want to get up and out in space, but what if we've dirtied up the skies so much that we can't do that? CubeSats, they're inexpensive to build. Students launch them. They send down invaluable kind of science, but and you can launch hundreds of them at a time. So again, guys, you guys thinking about an inventive way to capture some of that. There's a company down in Texas called Firefly that wants literally to create this kind of like Star Trek trawler and grab everything that's defunct in a big net and just basically pull it on out to the moons of Mars and literally create, I know I came up with this, but you know, space storage. I mean, again, guys, there's so much to be had here. How about you become the way station? And it does sound like a Firefly episode, right? Brown coats unite. But it's like, hey, why let all that metal and resources burn up in our atmosphere as it, you know, comes back in? What if we could recycle it? Is there a space station where we could recycle some of this part, smelt any of it? I don't know. Again, all of those things are crazy sounding ideas, I get, but these are the issues right before us. There's also Clear Space One has the space claw that they're trying to figure out again. How can we do this? I'm going to go on record and saying it's like the person that can figure out how to clean up and become that space junk collector, the garbage collection of space, is going to be a billionaire. And Ashley, if you decide how to do that, then you can have your spaceport in Canada, I'm pretty sure. So there's also, you know, it's like we've expanse. I mean, goodness, it's like they're living on the asteroid. But we know for certain that those asteroids contain gold, copper, aluminum, natural gas, all these kinds of things. What if asteroid mining becomes that another $1 trillion business and industry? And that's how, so they're IcarusInterstellar.org, and they're saying interstellar travel by 2100. And when you think about it, there are 60 years between think with me here. So 1903, we flew, the Wright brothers successfully flew the first plane. 1969, so that's 66 years later, we finally get to the moon. So you fast forward another 52 years, we finally fly in a helicopter on another planet. So you see how I'm saying it's like we got like usually a 30 to 50, 60 year gap in between some of these jumps. So we're here 2020. They might be right so that we could do this. But these are the companies that I would encourage you. Write these things down. Go check them out. Go see if they need interns. Apply. And oh, I love it when it's 6. There's the Project 1010 that Icarus is also involved with Alpha Centauri. Again, all of these things I'm mentioning, I'm going to go pretty fast because there's just so many things I want to share. But there's robotic exploration of Europa with Stone Aerospace. You get Shackleton Energy that, again, is basically putting gas station or energy stations in orbit, or wants to. You got the Golden Spike Company, and some of these places may or may not still be in business, but they started out going, we're going to offer lunar expeditions and tourism. And this to me is Wally embracing. This is what we're going to get to do, guys. Imagine, now I don't have the 200K yet to sign up. I am a second round citizen astronaut candidate for Space for Humanity. So I just got another thing that I had to apply. So maybe I'm moving on to the 3rd round, and I might get given to me, and I'll promise to do some good science if I get to go up. But just this vision could be ours. And, you know, I said 20 years ago, it's like there might be a day, kiddos, where we buy a ticket to space, as easily as we buy a ticket for the bus or a train or a plane. So the price will come down. Now that may take 20, 30 years for it to come down to where I could purchase one, but it's happening in your lifetime. This is actually how I want to get to space. Kind of does without all of the heavy, propulsion and stuff. You just take me up, I go up into space, I look around, I come back down. Maybe I've had a nice time up there. So imagine you become the space mixologist for the company that is the space elevator. Do you know that right now SpaceX is looking for a mixologist for their SpaceX or the spaceport? No, SpaceX, I think, was looking for a mixologist. So anybody out there knows how to make a really good space drink, there's a job offer out there for you. Now, satellite imaging and derived data. This is where my friend, chief technologist at IBM, is doing a lot of work. And this is when the economy, and this is when Wall Street knew something was up last year, March 2020. When they saw ships coming in but not going out, that is when you could see the economy tanking, and we knew how big and COVID was. So not only are we going to be able to see what's happening, here on Earth, we can see climate change, we can monitor other kind of like disasters and things like that. So satellite imaging, derived data from that kind of thing, huge, huge business. And if you are not familiar with the 100-year Starship, it's 100yss.org. Take a look at there. It's like you'll see all of these different kinds of propositions for any entrepreneurial thing you might be dreaming of right now. The Space Court Foundation, check them out. Just go to, I think it's spacecourtfoundation.org, or just Google. They've got internships available, but they're looking at all of these different space laws. Who owns it if you get there first? How do we do it peacefully? One of the most poignant things I heard back in 2019, we invited the Afghan girls robotics team, one of the few groups of girls that actually gets to study and go to school. They've got an amazing tech mentor there. She's one of the only females in Afghanistan to own a tech company. And what Fatima, this 15-year-old brilliant girl, stood before our audience at the Human to Mars Summit said is like, don't make Mars another Earth. And I think that's such a call to your generation in particular. My generation has decided to, it's like, I'm a little Gen X, and it's like, I think we've been on the cusp of trying for change, but we still haven't done it correctly. I think there is a better world where there's DEI, inclusion, and kindness and compassion. I've heard astronaut Nicole Stott say many times, it's just so important that whether we're up there or back here on this little moat of dust, this expansive world, we must learn how to be good crewmates here on Spaceship Earth. Or how else are we gonna all of a sudden decide, well, we're out here in space, we'll decide to be better. Now, I have heard astronauts say they didn't always like every crewmate they had, but they always decided that it was best for the success of the mission to work together well. So maybe that's how will be our paradigm shift as we go forward. This was back in 2015, but I had to put it in here. Again, Discovery and Science Channel, they were looking for reality shows. So if you're a filmmaker, if you're an artist, if you love like narratives and documentaries, trust me, people are going to want to see it. And this is happening. Space entertainment is taking a giant leap. It's like basically Netflix has partnered with SpaceX and Inspiration 4, and they're going to show us this entire mission. And again, I'll be watching. I'll probably have a watch party because I know Dr. Cyan Proctor. She's on the board of Explore Mars. She's a dear friend. And this is going to be huge business. As I was saying, luxury goods. This is the photo with them. And it's like, imagine, it's like for the people who can go to space, I'm expecting they want their Louis Vuitton. If you don't know Alfredo Munoz, he's delightful. He has a company called Abibu, and this is New York City. He's an architect, and he basically has created this entire kind of architectural landscape of what this city on Mars would be. Vera Miliani with Mars City Design. She's helping someone kind of like get the rights to figuring out the Martian clock because it's 24 hours and 39 minutes. So you can't use the Earth clock on Mars. So imagine again, these like technologies. And so they're trademarking that now. Now, if you really want some bizarro things and you stay right here on Earth, you can call it Life Knot. And this is by the founder of Sirius Radio. But you can basically, for a fee, upload your digital data. So everything that you have ever done on any social post, email, everything. And literally what you're doing is you are archiving your digital self for, say, 100 years from now to be uploaded into a digital descendant. I know it sounds crazy, but I heard her say it at a conference. This is for real stuff. And so you can upload your entire digital life. So maybe it's time to clean up that TikTok or, post you put there on Instagram, in case, I don't know if I want any weird digital stuff out there. But again, and it brings up all these ethical questions. Another company called LifeShip, you can actually send your DNA to the moon. It's kind of like, think about it as like the Wikipedia of genetic code living there on the moon. Now, I was gifted mine, so there's always, it's like, sometimes it's like knowing a ton of people like helps out, and you're like, I'll send mine to the moon and tell other people, but for the low price of $99. And they're going to launch, I forget if it's on a SpaceX or a ULA, one of the big launch partners, they will launch it to the moon, and there'll be a part of my DNA sitting there. If anybody ever wants to come by and check that out. So again, guys, it's like, not sure anybody's going to care, but we'll see. Now, it's 5 o'clock somewhere. So it's like the idea of, they have sent beer to space. Apparently they haven't mastered how good it tastes yet. They've even sent Ardbeg has sent scotch to space. That stuff is already pretty peaty. I'm not a fan of it. It's kind of like, it might cure a cold, but it's like, it tasted pretty terrible when it came down. But that it gave them information on, because it's like, you're going to sit it like, there's always, what is that joke? It's like, where do the astronauts hang out? At the space bar. So you're going to want something fun to drink there. If you're interested in reading more about alcohol does have a history in space, that's by Chris Carberry, the CEO of Explore Mars, and then my friend Robert Jacobson, Space is Open for Business. So if you're serious about becoming this entrepreneur, check out both these books. And again, for this to be the vision, we're going to have educators, we're going to have Martian midwives, or we're going to never have a baby on Mars, and everything's going to be in a test tube, and it will be grown outside into some kind of like plastic womb. I know it is alien to all we know, but this is what we're looking for, that agnostic way of thought that we are not yet accustomed. On the NASA website, when they talk about looking for life on Mars, they're looking for agnostic biosignatures, which basically just means we're looking for life as we don't know it. So in essence, what we're inviting all of you guys to do today is think about, like, we kind of usually think about astrobiologists, astrophysicists, software developers, geologists, satellite engineers, all of these things. But we've got 3D printing. We're going to need meals on Mars. We're going to, it's like, and somebody better figure out how we can grow cacao or take chocolate, because I don't want to live in any place in space that can't also serve me up at something chocolate at some point. You could be a space artist and categorize this. We're going to need space historians. We're going to need artists and SciComm. It's like, imagine being on the moon or Mars and sending back kind of like the blog from the day. We're going to need filmmakers. And again, all of these things, it's like, again, I'm afraid I'm going on too long, but it's like, this is my top advice, and I'll just go through a few of these things and you can read this yourselves. Whatever you are seeking is also seeking you. And also, I will say that even if it doesn't look like what you thought it was going to look like, and you begin your career, it sounds like Sherry may have found her way to CommDev and was like thinking, how am I here? But it was for such a time as this, because it catapulted her in a direction she wouldn't have otherwise found. Right. Same way for me. Guys, my undergrad is in music and theater. I came to space and science because I looked around. I love performing. I had all of these jobs working with and for kids, but I realized, who's the female role model in science? I loved it. I had great teachers along the way, so I kept at it. And funny enough, the more that I looked for ways to kind of teach and promote and kind of like slide science in there in the way that I was doing my career, the more often people said, hey, come to the table. So again, you may feel like a unicorn. You're like, well, I'm not sure I'd ever fit in. Trust me. It's like in our industry, I have found people that go, hey, I don't think like you. I once had an engineer tell me, and I think Sherry, you'll like this, that, and I love the fact that you made it great for like common man to understand what you guys were doing, is that I had an engineer go, I don't think in this abstract way, Janet, that you try to explain things to kids. It's like, I'm like, okay, why not? And it's like, he was very honest. It's like, but I realized nobody had ever given the guy the opportunity. So it's like, if you have your art and all of your creativity over there, let it sit right alongside all your love of science and space, because it worked for Da Vinci. He let his art inform his science inform his art. And that's what we need, this integrated way of thinking and doing. We've kept some of these things too far apart for too long. And so create your own kind of science. And if it sounds crazy today, I mean, remember this, Einstein said, if your idea is not absurd enough, then there is no hope for it. So embrace that today. Stay true to who you are. Be open to every possibility. Talk with and meet as many people as you can along the way. And, you become the first ever space meteorologist, because it's like, they're going to want to know what the weather's like on Mars. Is this dust storm ever going to end? It's like, is there kind of some solar storm headed for the moon? Everybody's got to go underground. So any of these things are possible. Solar space, educators, filmmakers, and, sure, you're going to have to know your stuff. It's not like anybody's going to, it's like I heard Commander Chris Hadfield, and if you haven't listened to that guy, you really should. He's such a Canadian treasure. Yes. And it's like, basically, he says, don't let life pick you into becoming someone you don't want to be. And he also says, and it's not like somebody shows up at your door, hey, Chris, I'd like for you to become an astronaut. No, it takes, if you want to learn music or whatever, you start out with learning a few notes. But he says that when you're on the International Space Station, you may come up against something that you only ever studied hypothetically 25 years ago in a classroom, and all of a sudden you're having to like reach back there in the farthest reaches of your database of your brain and use that information. So it's not like, it's not like you're just going to get invited to the party because, hey, we think, no, you're going to have to do the work. But doing the work is what makes it all so very worthwhile. And it's like, again, whether it's music, medicine, art, it's like the sky is not the limit. It's what I can tell you, and especially what we've seen here in this last little while. Imagine this, in the middle of the weirdest time that I have ever lived, in the middle of a pandemic, we've seen two things take off in commercial space flight. We've seen success there. We've seen things land on Mars. We've had a helicopter fly on Mars. All of this inside and in spite of what our circumstances are. So that keeps me really excited about what will you create? What's next for you? You can create the future. And if it sounds crazy today, it's probably going to be something that Sherry and I will buy tomorrow. And I'll end my talk there. So I see hands. Joseph, I see your hand.
Hi, Janet and Sherry. Thanks for your presentation. There's a question that I always love to ask, and I probably keep asking because it's cool. So I think it's for both of you. Every time that I talk to a scientist, I really like to ask it. So who's your favorite scientific communicator? Who inspired you the most?
Sherry, do you want to go first, or I can go first?
Well, you know what, I'll jump in. I think the people that inspired me weren't necessarily scientific communicators. They were just the engineers that I met when I started my career in aerospace. There were every type of scientists. Like there were PhDs and there were just, you know, master degree engineers. You know, I couldn't have described for anybody prior to working in such a highly technical environment what the creativity of engineers feels like to a person who's not an engineer. And for me, it was like an art form. I mean, I know it's science, I get it, but you know, I wasn't a scientist either, right? Like, you know, physics for me in high school was like, you know, just didn't have the right teachers, right? That to capture my imagination. But talking to those people every day, rubbing shoulders with them, learning what was in their minds was truly the greatest gift that I've ever been exposed to. And I'm always grateful that at such a young age that I got to see that, because that is what inspired me. Absolutely.
For me, it was my 5th grade teacher, Joseph. Her name was Miss Ernestine Yarborough Jones, who and it was 1978. They were wearing their bell bottoms and they had a star party, and she and another great lady named Miss Carolyn Davis brought a couple of telescopes, and here were 2 females showing me the sky and pointing out constellations. And that was such a formative moment for me. And during that school year, Miss Yarborough Jones would do this thing where she would come by and she would whisper something into your ear that was meant for you and you alone. So she might say, Janet, now remember, it's like science isn't just for the boys, it's for the girls too. So she may have said that to everybody in there, but she made you feel like she was just whispering that to you. And then you know, it's like I probably with even how I teach and engage with kids now, I so measure how I do that with how she loved. She was stern. You knew the gate. She suffered no fools, but also you knew you were boundlessly loved by her. So she probably is my hero of all heroes in science. But I have to say, when I was deciding to start Janet's Planet and was looking around and thought, who else is doing science? How can I use this music and theater thing and kind of create something scientific? The only folks doing science at that time were Bill Nye the Science Guy and Beekman's World. And I was like, where's the ladies? So it's like in the last year or so, I've gotten a chance to meet and speak with Bill Nye. So that was nice to tell him that he was a big part of why I wanted to follow a little bit in his footsteps.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
So I'm going to put a plug in here for Evandro. So, you know, I got to meet Evandro through one of our international, you know, intake programs. And, you know, I met him and he's a very kind of humble guy, very quiet, you know, especially in the early days. I think he was worried about his English and whether it was good enough. And I started to get to know him. And, you know, then I started to find out, oh my gosh, this man is absolutely brilliant. And then I find out later on that he's also quite an accomplished musician. I'm like, okay, so where was I when the guy upstairs was handing out gray matter? Like, this is not fair. Evandro, I was just talking about you today because Amy and I went over before this. You probably saw I had a coffee. I thought, I'm going to go get a coffee. So Amy and I walked up to the Cork and Bean here, and I'm like, it's so not fair. I would like to be 1/10 of as smart as you are. But anyway, we bring different gifts to the table, right? So yeah, here we are. This event has been absolutely spectacular. Thanks for organizing it. And Janet, it has been an absolute pleasure meeting you. I will connect with you offline.
Please do. That's the thing. Everybody who's gathered here, I hope that you understand that it's like, and Evandro, it's like thinking of that. I just knew Evandro was wonderful. I think we met at a conference or we started engaging. It's like, I tend to be a person, it's like, who says yes. If I can't help you personally, I'll go, who could I, where's my good people network? How do we connect you with those people that you probably might really, benefit from knowing? And so that would be, again, I think Sherry's nodding her head over there, but it's like, reach out to us. Now, I'll be honest with you. It's like, I can't help with visas or getting you in a certain college. I can write a really good recommendation letter. So I'll tell you that. But, there are things that are way above what I am actually capable of doing. But if you say, I'm very interested in hearing more about Dr. Daniel Tompkins. And I go, oh, he's giving a free to all thing. Let me send you this information. Or, hey, if you're interested in this thing, this might be some place that you want to plug in. Or if you're not involved with, SEDS or the Canadian Space Society, or, Explore Mars, or find your kind of group. You will find them, and it's like sometimes it's going to be National Space Society or Canadian Space Society, or it might be, like Explore Mars, or there's so many organizations out there. Find that group of people that you really connect with. But it's like, you guys are the perfect age to like go, who wants to come along and let's innovate some of this crazy stuff I'm thinking about? Because guys, it is the science of tomorrow, and it is coming. And there's so many people jumping in on this. Again, it's like, if anybody out there going to start the space garbage collection, I'll give a few dollars your way. I'll buy you some crypto to start it. Anyway, it's like, that's the thing. I'm telling you, it is going to be a big business. I cannot do it myself, nor have the funds to do it. But when you do it, I will semi go back as I rock in my granny chair and going, I knew that was a good idea. Sherry, do you have, like, if money were no object, do you have something you would invent or create? What would be your next venture?
Oh,
Money's no object.
Yeah, money's no object. Oh man. I've had some really interesting opportunities in my life to be in different aircraft, helicopters, small aircraft, big private jets, big jets. And I've had friends of mine who are all pilots say, oh, you should just go learn to be a pilot. And I'm like, oh, no, the world is not ready for me in pilot mode. Definitely not. So, the thing that I think would be really cool is autonomous aircraft, right? Like, we're there. Dubai's got some that they're developing, but I would be the person who would get in, an autonomous aircraft and let it take me somewhere. I love flying. I love everything about the aspects of flying. It's fast. It's comfortable. All that kind of stuff. So, I'd say it would probably be something like that. Yeah.
And it's like already in Nashville, where I live in Nashville, Tennessee. I know folks who are working on the redesign of the Nashville International Airport, and they're designing spaces that can be converted from electric cars for your flying cars. And so cool. NASA is working on supersonic flight. They're doing crowd tests to make sure that the noise level and decibel level is low enough. You guys you're going to come into time where you're going to see planes flying by solar power. You're going to see planes flying from, LA to New York in a couple of hours rather than, all of the delays. And so whether it's aviation, the other folks that have presented to the kids that I've taught this summer are the FAA. And again, whether that's tower control, they're saying they're going to need over 600,000 people in the aerospace industry in the next 20 years. And we already know with as many flights that are like lagging right now, again, COVID brought about a lot of layoffs and stuff. So now they're trying to hire back as people travel more. And so again, it's like, find that thing that you go, oh, this is this little bit I love, or even be willing to go, I don't know anything about this, but it's curious to me. You might very well end up finding exactly what you're suited for. Or I always tell people, I'm kind of a galaxy of things. I'm with you, Sherry. I don't think I got enough great vision for flying a plane, or my freak out valve is high.
Yeah,
you don't want me freaking out. You just want me as a passenger. So yeah, there's lots of things I want to try. I'll jump out of a plane with you. I'll do whatever, but yeah, driving the darn thing, I don't think so. But yeah, be willing to try anything, I think, is our message, because, I did a bit of research for a speech I did for some kids back in the spring. And that's where, I was finding out all of this stuff about, even from the iconic kind of Star Trek device. It's like, it looked a lot like the Motorola phone. So you think about when that kind of like first 1960s episode of Star Trek happened, and then the flip phone kind of finally came on to be, was 1983, so another 25 years. I just think it's fantastic what we sometimes see as sci-fi or entertainment does come to fruition in some kind of way. So yeah, I mean, I think you'll see there's another company, is it out of the Netherlands or something? It's called LilyPad. And because of rising sea levels, this guy has said that a lot of coastal places are going to be without places to live. So he's creating this thing called LilyPad, which would live on the water, totally self-sustaining. So imagine Venice without any crumbling walls, you know. And so again, it's going to be crazy. I think the things that we'll see even in the next 20, 30, 40 years. I hope I live long enough to see everything that I think is potential, but it's certainly coming. Evandro, I guess we should turn this back over to you because I could chat about this stuff all day.
Yeah, it's awesome. So I'd like to thank you, Sherry. Thank you, Janet. It was so amazing session. Again, amazing. Was so inspiring. And I'd like to thank you, everybody. So see you in the next event, talking about the space. And let's talk about space in Canada as well. So thank you, everybody. Have a nice
long
weekend.
and prosper.
Yeah, I'm with you. All the Trekkies, we're dating ourselves.
We are. I played it with my friend Carol and with her walkie-talkie, so you can't take that out of me.
Yeah,
hey guys, be in touch. Thank you.
Bye.
Have a
Sherry,
great
pleasure to meet you.
as well, Janet. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
guys. Take care.
Bye-bye.